Right. And we are now live on the wonderful world of Facebook and the web. So, first of all, good evening to you both. And I just want to say a massive thank you to you both for agreeing to do this live client feedback sort of interview, really. And as first time you came to us a while ago, just really interested in a bit of feedback in terms of, as a first time buyer, what were the challenges you faced when you were thinking about buying a property? That's probably a good starter for 10, really.
Yeah, I think it's one of the sort of big hurdles that we had was predominantly changing cities at the beginning of buying, and I think that was largely because of the pandemic and the expectation and the of the mortgage that we could get, so moving from 5% to 15%, and I think that was probably one of the biggest challenges, was then thinking about location. And then working with you really to look at what we could afford, what was in reach, and what would give us good leverage, and then really to think about that more pragmatically in terms of long term, in terms of just sort of what really we wanted from day-to-day living, but also in terms of putting down a deposit and then thinking about it in terms of an investment. So there was some really sound advice that came through to help us to start to think about that differently.
Yeah, because that initial conversation was, I mean, you were great because you didn't have any sort of set boundaries or preconceived ideas of you had to absolutely be here or you had to absolutely be there. And then in terms of as the advice sort of process worked through, what were your sort of expectations as you sort of engaged with our services to what you would get from it?
I think going into it from the start, we weren't really sure, because it was the first time we were going through this process. So it was really helpful that you were so approachable and kind of broke it all down and demystified every step of the process for us, so we could see what was going to happen at each stage and what was going to be expected of us and what you were going to offer us in return. Because obviously I've been reading about the way mortgages work and buying houses, all that stuff, and you can do all the research, but it still doesn't mean that you know how that's going to work in reality once you start going down that path. So that was one of the major bonuses of working with you, was the clear explanation and sort of jargon busting that you did so clearly.
Good. At least we're succeeding. I mean, we sort of live and die by sort of the name of the brand, so crystal clear, and that was obviously deliberate to try and break down those sort of jargon, because it's as with any industry, sort of plagued with three-letter acronyms and all the rest of the nonsense. I've also I don't know the sort of backstory a little bit, but how did you actually come to find us? It was on was it on a forum or a message board, or was...
So that come from my membership of London Fixed Gear and Single Speed Forum, which is primarily for what it says on the tin, bike riding in London, specifically fixed gear and single speed bikes. But over the years, that's grown to be a huge community of probably 30,000 active users.
Wow, that's massive.
Yeah, it's a really, really well run and well organized forum, and has got a really strong, tight knit community involved in it. But as people get older, they might have met through bikes, but then other things come into play. So there's many, many sub forums, and one of them is about buying a house. And word of mouth works really well on the forum, and because we were based in London as well at the time, I just asked, can anyone recommend mortgage advice, and they name checked you, Mike, specifically at Crystal Clear. So it wasn't just your company, it was you, that we should speak to you. And it was about 4 or 5 people that said we should speak to you, which was nice.
That is the power of referral, isn't it? And the power of word of mouth.
There was a trend.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. And obviously, obviously we then got the conversations, and then we sort of worked that through, and you're sort of now in your new home, and in terms of the sort of value add, because everything we do with our clients is all about adding value and basically doing the best we can to help you. So sort of reflecting back over the process, and I know it sort of took a little bit of time. But what were the areas you would say that where we added the most value to both of you?
I think probably. I think really all the way through it was our value, right from the offset, thinking about, should we put 10% deposit, should we put 15% deposit, what is the interest rate in relation to that. So I think that was a value, particularly looking at data really. And then additionally, I think the after part where we did secured the mortgage, we'd secured property, but then also the tidying up aspect in terms of bringing it to a closure. And I think that was really valuable as well, and just being that mediator in between, so that we could move the process along at speed, or become speedier. And that was certainly a value.
Yeah, because it was being able to ask you for advice at each stage and say, the conveyancing solicitor said this, or the seller's agents told me this. How do we get to the next stage? Is there something I need to be doing? Is there someone I can be checking? And being able to ask you at each stage what I should be doing was invaluable and made a huge difference. Because we did come to a number of snag points through the process of our purchase. And yeah, just being able to call you or email you made me feel like I had someone that could advise me on the best next steps, which was really helpful.
Good. Thank you for that. And it's, and again, that's all the things that we aim to do. And it is quite a fragmented process, buying a home. And you think about it, first time buyers, first time you sort of stepped into that sort of ring of process in terms of what to do. And then you've got the fragmentation with all the different stakeholders. So yeah, great to know we sort of hit the mark on that side of things. And I mean, this is sort of putting it out there a bit, but is there anything we could do differently or anything we could do better for our next sort of set of first time buyers coming through? $1 million question.
Yeah, I mean, I strive to look at what can we do better, because I think we can ultimately always do things better. But I think as first time buyers and not being through this experience, it's really difficult to put your finger really on the mark of what could have been done better, because I just think you were so approachable, and you were so able to and quick to come back with responses that it didn't ever feel like we were in a particularly bad place at all. We just felt very looked after. So yeah. It's really hard to answer that question.
Yeah, I mean, because the only sort of critical feedback that I could offer in the process was that the conveyancing solicitor was not as responsive as we would have hoped. But that's not a criticism of you or feedback for you to build on. That's kind of aside from your services. So.
Yeah, it's one of the things, and I know we've had this conversation about the solicitors in the process, and I think it was partly driven by your case, and we've just really trimmed that back. We only now work with those solicitors that we know can deliver, and particularly with the process, you just can't have that part of the process falling down or being delayed or not getting the communication. Otherwise, it just leaves sort of with that sort of heightened degree of sort of anxiousness to want to know when it's all going to wrap up. So, but we got there in the end. Got the home, moved in, and any boxes left, or you're all good to go and all sorted?
We're nearly there, aren't we? There's a few things that are in boxes because they'll go in the loft because they're Christmas decorations, so we're not going to unpack those. But so I think that gets a pass if that's still boxed. But yeah, other than that, I've unpacked the garage. I've got bike wheels hung up all over the garage ceiling, so that's good.
Perfect. Is there anything else you want to say about what we've done, or anything else that we could do differently, or sort of really final question, really, if there's anything else I haven't sort of asked you about?
Trying to think. I think I found the whole experience massively positive, and would be more than happy to recommend you back on London Fixed Gear when someone asks next time, or in real life, with outside of the internet. But because I just think that it was wholly positive and just made the whole idea of going into buying a house for the first time massively less terrifying, because it was just so clear and simple, and we had a clear line of communication to progress at every stage, which was great. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, and I think as well, you get lots of advice from lots of different people who are already homeowners. But I think it was just invaluable really to have like a professional body and that independent, because then you knew the information that you were getting was accurate, and it was just more valuable in the sense that it was new information, so you knew every piece of information that you were receiving was up-to-date information, as particularly reflecting back into who you were getting a mortgage with, etc. And so I think it was just really invaluable as first-time buyers to have that independency as well in terms of professional advice.
Yeah, rather than someone that bought the house 5 years ago that's half remembering what happened at the time. Yeah, definitely.
I think everybody's experience is clearly unique as well in terms of these are the sort of main channels that we go through, but everybody's journey will have different hiccups, and I think so. I think having an advisor additionally on top just means that you're constantly being looked after during those processes.
Yeah, and it's a massively fast changing industry, and particularly in the last year with the pandemic as well, and just every day is a school day. And it's a phrase I use quite a lot, but it really does reflect that, and being able to impart that to you if things change, if things happen differently, was absolutely key part of the overall process. But I just want to say massive congratulations to you both for moving in, getting your own home, and on that ladder now of first-time buyers and all that good stuff. And thank you for taking the time to agree to do this live interview this evening.
No problem.
Welcome.
Really appreciate it. Really appreciate the feedback, and thanks for going live with us tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thanks.